If you are trying to connect with your customers and you aren't using user research, listen up. Today, I'm joined by Andy Warr, a veteran of user research discipline. Andy and I were together at Instagram during the early days. In fact, Andy was the first user researcher ever hired at Instagram. So yeah, he is the OG of user research at Instagram. He built and scaled the Instagram user research team during the hyper-growth years of Instagram. He hired some of the best user researchers from around the world. Some of them have gone on to become dear friends of mine. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, Sanchan. Thanks for having me here.
Today, we're going to talk about all things user research. We're going to go in depth into what user research is and what it isn't. We're not going to shy away from any controversial topics either. So stay tuned to listen Andy and I break down the discipline of user research and the amazing impact it can have on your products and make them successful. So let's get started. The first topic Andy and I want to talk about is, what is user research anyhow? Some of you might have worked with a user researcher on your team, but many of you might not have. So let's start by grounding ourselves in what user research is and what it isn't.
Yeah, I'll start off with a textbook definition of what user research is. User research focuses on understanding user behavior, needs, and motivations, and it does this through a number of inquiry techniques. This could be anything from user interviews, surveys, usability tests, to name a few examples. And what you're hoping for is taking this understanding of your customers, how they behave, interact with products, and also evaluate the design solutions that you're thinking about to ensure that they meet your needs. It enables the product teams to get the right design and the design right. So the right design being of all the things that you could build, ensuring that you are actually choosing what's going to be most valuable to your customer, and the design right in terms of ensuring that what you're building can actually be used by your user and they understand what it is.
And at the end of the day, you and your team must understand your customers and their problems deeply. But Andy, I remember Steve Jobs once said, customers do not know what they want. So why do I need to study them?
What does Steve Jobs know, Sanchan?
Yes.
The funny thing though is he made this statement, yet Apple had and still has today various types of research teams, including market research and user research. But really the most important thing is he is right in terms of customers don't know what they want. And really it's the idea of a product team finding a sweet spot between the business goals, user needs, and technical capabilities. And that's really when you start building something magical. And it's really important to ensure that a product is feasible, it's usable, and it's valuable. And user research in particular helps with those latter two. So if a customer doesn't see value in a product, they're not going to buy it, they're not going to use it. If a user cannot use the product, they're going to churn. You're going to have a high attrition rate for your product. Yet we also have to remember that what people say is not necessarily what people do. And as such, user research is just one of many inputs into making product decisions. So don't believe everything that you hear, but how can you think about what's your data science team telling you as well? What is the business strategy? And how do all of those fit together to tell you what direction to go on?
In fact, some of the best insights in my career came from understanding the user's problems deeply. Remember the time, Andy, when we did Instagram shopping research? We had an initial hunch that people will like Instagram shopping, but we did not know for sure that they will love it.
And Sanchan, that's exactly where user research comes in.
I remember our data science team telling us that there's a small cohort of users who are using Instagram to buy and sell products. They saw selling activity in Southeast Asia and even in America. People were using Instagram to discover new products, follow businesses and creators selling those products like flip-flops, shirts, jewelry, and many other products. They were using Instagram feed and Instagram direct messaging to conduct the actual sale. Incredible.
Yeah, and it was that type of insight and emergent behavior that led us to conducting user research with customers to actually understand their shopping journey. So I remember one of the studies that we conducted was really trying to go through someone's entire shopping journey, such as buying apparel, and then understanding each step of the process, everything from how the process started, why they actually wanted to buy something, through to how they went about discovering, looking for various items, shortlisting those items, buying those items, and then maybe even finishing with a review. And that whole process was really what initiated the whole Instagram shopping lifecycle. And I remember you thinking about, well, where's the first place that we're going to start for product? And thinking about that journey and how Instagram fits into it, which was one of the things that led to Instagram product tags.
And for those of you who work with user research on a daily basis, you understand that this is just one of many inputs that I, as a head of product, must consider when deciding whether to fund a particular project or not. In this particular case, we use the amazing insights from a data science team, from a user research team, as well as our own gut and intuition of how we wanted Instagram to evolve into becoming the de facto shopping channel for social shopping. I always believe that your users will lead the way. And this is how you uncover amazing emerging behaviors and start to build new products that weren't on your original roadmap.
And the one thing that I'll add on to that, Sanchan, is where we see a lot of user research playing with other disciplines. You might have your data science team that tells you a behavior that you're seeing, or what, but you don't necessarily understand it deeply other than the metrics that you're collecting, or you don't understand why people are engaging in that. So that's where your user research team can really go into understanding that behavior in more depth. Or it could be the case that you have a user researcher who starts to see an emergent behavior. Like one example from Instagram was when we started to see the emergence of Finsta accounts or fake Instagram accounts. And then that leads to the data science team saying, okay, is this really a thing? And being able to tell if multiple accounts are used on a single device and therefore back up this more qualitative data that we're seeing.
Personally, I love user research and data science team. I've always worked closely with them. As a product leader, they are my eyes and ears to provide critical inputs for me to decide if I should invest in something. The value of user research becomes even more evident when you yourself are not the customer of your product. Let me explain that more. The biggest mistake product teams can make is to assume that we, the builders of the product, are also the quintessential users of that product. This couldn't be farther from the truth. While we may use the product, we may or may not be the exact target audience.
100% right, Sanchan. We are not the users of our product. I think a great example of this is when I worked at Uber. Uber, global company. We all used Uber as a rider and we had a good intuition of what that experience was like. But not many of us on the team had an experience of what it was like to be a Uber Eats courier in Indonesia, what it's like to be a driver in India, or what it's like to actually be someone who's living in Brazil trying to order groceries through Uber Eats. And those are the types of deep experiences that user researchers can go and study, document, and bring back to the product team so they can think about opportunities that they may better serve their customers and add business value.
And if you're a product manager, assuming that your product will work the same way in every country around the world, you're making a big mistake. It's your job to understand the differences and similarities of your users around the world and then tailor-make your product to suit their needs. Let's take another example, a B2B product space. Let's say you were working at a B2B supply chain product. You, the builder of the product, are definitely not the user of that product.
So when I joined Airtable is a platform that allows people who work within enterprises to build applications for their specific use cases. So it has this broad range of horizontal use cases. It could be used by people who work in product, like ourselves, people who work in marketing, an adjacent function, or even cattle farmers who are using it to keep track of their cattle. And one of the problems that Airtable had early on was because it's a platform, it works horizontally across many different use cases. And what we ended up doing is we put together a cross-functional team of product, customer success, data science, and business operations to really think about, okay, what are the top use cases that Airtable are used for? And then what are the types of applications and users that are using it? And what we found was that our top use cases were product operations and marketing. And with this deep understanding, we pivoted our company strategy to focus on those two use cases and then build out specialized apps for those customers, really understanding their jobs to be done and ensuring that we were meeting those needs by having a close design process with some of our customers who fell within those use cases, as well as iteratively testing on the solutions that we were delivering for them.
But Andy, let's be real. Can I really make a decision on user research done on 6 people? How reliable is that data?
100% Sanchan, don't make a decision based on 6 people. The key thing about user research is that the data collected from it is evidence-based. There is a behavior or need. So even if one person experienced something, there is evidence of that. The question is this a dominant behavior or a common need? And a product team really needs to come in and say, is this an issue for the product that many people may have, or is there a large enough opportunity here? And what other data sources do I have available to me that can either support or refute a hypothesis which could be formed based on that initial insight?
And let me say that again, user research is one of the many inputs you must consider when deciding whether to invest in a product area or not. I have been in many situations where I have made the decision to not invest in an area, even though the data was convincing enough to build that product. I still didn't invest in that area because some of the other inputs, for example, the overall company strategy, the overall company financials, and the revenue that we will generate using this product idea weren't the right ones to invest in when you consider the whole company. Andy, I always hear that user research must have a seat at the table. What does that even mean? I don't even have a table. We work remotely.
That's a good one, Sanchan. I have been in countless companies and had countless conversations with user researchers who say that they want a seat at the table. User researchers don't need a seat at the table, but they should probably have a seat at a table. So I'll tell you a bit more about what that means. So user researchers do not need to be involved in every product decision. As I mentioned previously, user research is one input in terms of making product decisions. You can imagine the size of a table you would need if you was going to have the user researcher, the data scientists, the legal team, the finance team, the marketing team, the business operations team, the strategy and operations team. And don't forget about you, Sanchan. You've got to be at that table as well.
Exactly. And that's going to be a pretty massive table. And nothing is ever going to get done.
Now, all of that said, a user researcher should have a seat at a table. And that really depends on the type of impact and influence you want your user research team to be having. If you want a user research team to be informing product roadmaps, include them in planning sessions. If you want a user research team to be helping make design decisions, include them in design crits and product reviews. The other thing that I want to mention about the seat at the table is that you do not get a seat at the table. You have to earn the seat at the table. When I joined Airtable and Instagram, I was not initially part of those companies' leadership meetings, despite being part of the leadership team. However, they were talking about my work and my team's work so much that it became obvious that I needed to be in the room because no one knew that work better than myself and my team.
But Andy, if I'm not in the meeting, how do I even keep up with what's happening with the product roadmap?
Yeah, that's a complaint that I hear from a lot of researchers as well, that they might not be able to or want to contribute to a decision in the room, but just by being in the meeting, they're going to learn about what's happening and be able to use that to inform their work. And that is partially true, but there are other mechanisms for that information to be disseminated to others in the company. It could be catching up with you on our weekly one-on-one or monthly one-on-one, whatever we used to have back in the day. It could be through a notes in a shared document that everyone on the product team has access to. I think the most important thing here is I always think back to a story that I heard about Elon Musk. And I'm not sure if he's the best person to be looking up to, but I do agree with the approach that I'm going to speak to now. He was in a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, he said to someone, "Why were you in this meeting? You didn't speak the entire time. You didn't contribute to this meeting." And I do truly believe in that. If you're going to be in a room taking up space, even if it's virtual space, you need to be contributing. You need to be having a net benefit to what's being said and contributing to the decisions being made.
And if you're attending a meeting as an FYI just to know what's happening, you better wait for the meeting notes. The meeting organizer is going to send out those notes to ensure everybody is aware of what was discussed and what are the next steps for this project.
And if they're not doing that, tell them to do it. It's their job.
But Andy, come on, PM and designers are smart enough to connect with the customer and figure things out. I'm a 10, 20 people startup. Why do I need to hire a user researcher?
Companies have been doing user research way before they hired their first researcher. Do you know the original user researcher at Instagram? Kevin and Mike, the founders. They're the ones who really identify that customer problem, truly understand it, obsess over it, and build a product that solves that problem. And as these teams, they grow, designers and PMs, there should be regularly connecting with customers. Like Sanchan, like the number of research trips that you attended to really have an understanding of what was happening. And I'm sure that you chatted with customers and partners outside of the research team did itself. I will say though, there's probably a difference between connecting with customers and conducting research. I really love this quote by Bill Boxton. Does the fact that you can count the change in your pocket make you a mathematician? Like, hell no, I'm not a mathematician, but I can definitely count the change in my pocket, or at least when we had coins. So building a product is hard. If you find yourself not understanding your customers, their problems and needs, you probably need a user researcher. If you find that you're not confident in the research that you're conducting, or your designers and PMs are conducting, you probably need a user researcher. And if you find that you don't have enough time to conduct interviews with your customers, you also probably need a user researcher. But the one thing that I really want to emphasize here is having a user researcher or a user research team is not an excuse to not connect with customers yourselves.
Absolutely right. And as a leader of the product organization, it's imperative that you go out there, listen to your customers' feedback firsthand. You cannot delegate that task to anybody else. Not only you have to attend the sessions, but also create opportunities to learn by immersing yourself with your customer so you can build that intuitive sense about the current and the emerging customer behaviors.
Yeah. And Sanchan, I want to tell you like a quick story actually back from Instagram. I'm not sure if you would know about this one. I was in Germany with one of our growth PMs. And one of the things that we always used to do was if we ever encountered a non-user of Instagram, we would always ask them to sign up, so create an account and go through the first-time user experience. So we're in Germany, there's a user who does not use Instagram. They download the app, they sign up for it, and they sign up using Facebook, and everything seems pretty normal. And when we get out of the interview, George, who was the growth PM, he said to me, "Why was Starbucks the second account that we suggested she follow?" And he said, like, she connected with Facebook. We should have been sharing more like higher intent connections with her, people that we should more likely to connect with. And George, he messaged an engineer back in Menlo Park and found out that a callback wasn't actually firing. And it's really that customer insight and technical expertise that really led to that insight there. And I guarantee no researcher would have identified that. So you need to have your partners in the room.
Now that you know what user research is all about and how they add tremendous value to the success of your product, let us share with you some things that you can do on your own to develop an even deeper understanding about user research.
I think everyone working in product should read the book Inspired by Marty Kanigan, and then also Continuous Discovery by Teresa Torres.
And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to Andy and I, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions.